So anyone that hasn't seen these roster reviews before, we've done a couple of them on the channel before, but we do these live reviews either recorded like this or live on the stream, or we do them with people directly on Zoom. So there's a couple different options. Roster reviews at dynastytradesin5.com. Send an email there to inquire on how to get one. We send everybody a Google Doc, fill out a bunch of questions about your league. You send us all the information on it, the link, the settings, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go through it. 10 teams, super flex, PPR scoring. There's no premiums. So there's no point per carry, no tight end premium, nothing. So it's a 10 team start 10. We've had quite a few 10 team start 10 questions tonight. So 10 teams start 10. This was a startup that happened earlier this summer. So we're literally only like 4 weeks into this league. And immediately this team, as you can tell, based on Dynasty Daddy, we use Dynasty-Daddy to do the reviews. This is a rebuilding team. That's what he answered the team was. That's what it's clear on Dynasty Daddy. When you look at the rank, overall rank 1, which overall rank of 1 will rank your assets, but in terms of where your team stands, it's 10th in starter rank. So basically the worst set of starters in the league, top to bottom. But as you can see, Shane, a lot of assets, good receivers, a bunch of picks, some quarterbacks to, lean on in the future, even if Derek Carr really is one that you'd probably prefer to move, but you still got Kyler and CJ Stroud. So we got a shell of a team that's pretty good here. And then obviously 2 of his firsts, he says one of them is top 2 and the other one is early. So assume we're going to be able to add probably 2 studs in next year's draft. Oof. So we'll stop there. But where do you start with this team? What's your initial thoughts?
Well, the first thing I looked at, I did read through his notes a little bit. He talked about there's no max points for. That's not how they determine the standings. They determine it by standings. And so that means he has a chain on his taxi. And I would hope that he also has Stroud on there as well, because it would be really nice rolling out Derek Carr and not Zach Wilson last week, but Desmond Ridder every week. But anywho, obviously I love the wide receivers, Jamar Chase and Garrett Wilson. We like Jackson Smith and Jigba. There are people on this earth that will go to their grave telling you that Jameson Williams is good. And whether I think he is or not, what's important, he's an asset. He's almost like another second-round pick, if not more than that. If that dude comes out and has one good game, the Jameson fanatics are going to go nuts in your league's comments. You find that person and you sell them Jameson quickly. Kyle Pitts, you have the dream of a tight end, right? So that's fun. Multiple picks, lots of seconds, lots of flexibility. So what I like about the roster best, I guess, is the flexibility. And he's going to have a great quarterback room, right? It's going to be Stroud, who looks like a top 10 quarterback, and Kyler Murray, who has been a top 8 point per game quarterback his entire career. So I do like this roster. Obviously, if we're tanking, even though Devin Achane doesn't hurt us right now, I would be probably exploring moves for Devin Achane and cashing out high, but we can get
that was going to be my first thing. Is we immediately look at, okay, what's the direction this year? Clearly direction is we don't really care what production is on the team, and then what survives into next year given that. And then you look at the market. There have been a couple questions, and I don't want to navigate away from the team right now, but it does say he's 1-3, and someone mentioned Graphic 13 says this team still has a chance. What is the all play record? And what are some of the other peripherals that I talked about earlier? I mean, let's just address that first, Shane. Does this team have a chance? Do you think, does it have enough to win this year to where you would consider making any sort of moves to go and buy points in a 10 team start 10? So typically we'd say, oh yeah, you can win with a bad running back room, but here, you're probably going to need a couple hammers at running back and maybe one more hammer elsewhere, either tight end or receiver, or probably quarterback too, because you have Kyler down.
That's more the issue for me, is that if, say, Kyler was actually playing right now, then I'd go, sure, you have a chance. You know what I mean? Because you have your elite quarterback and you have what looks to be an elite quarterback, for at least scoring wise this year, one of the top 10 quarterback. Pulling Devin Achane off the taxi squad, there's additional, I don't know, point per touch. Let's just put it there. I don't know, 10 to 20 points, depending on how many times he touches the ball. But no, it still feels light, because that's not what's happening. It's Kyler Murray's out for, I don't know. We haven't heard anything about when he's coming back quite yet. Kyle Pitts is, I hate to say this, but he's basically a zero at the tight end position. He's not even, forget a tight end positional advantage. He's not even giving you, he's not matching bad tight ends. So he's legitimately just like a flat out zero. And you've talked about this before. Having him on your roster pretty much means you have to start him, you know? So I might be better off going, you know what? I'm going to start Luke Musgrave, assuming his knee's correct, because at least he's going to give me 8-9 points, whereas there's weeks Pitt's going to give me 0. But you can't do that because of Pitt's upside, right? So you won't do that, I should say. So no, I don't think it can compete this year, but it's definitely a team that I think will be ready to compete next year because we're going to be adding another quarterback. We're going to be flipping Devin a chain for probably another high-end wide receiver. And then with all these picks, we'll definitely be able to make some moves. And he's already made some moves. I think he said, nope, he tiered down. Never mind. Go ahead.
No, he moved Kyron Williams for a second. So it's good that Ken's in here so he can update us on what's happened since he filled out the sheet. He moved Kyron for a second. He moved Baker Mayfield for a second. I'm fine with both of those deals. Then he made this one too. Dobbs in a second for Zay Flowers, and then flipped Zay Flowers and Jalen Warren in a second and a third for 2 firsts to a pretty May team. So he's hoping that those firsts end up being, good firsts down the road. So like he's made some good deals, but the fact that he's already traded away Kyron Williams, Romeo Dobbs, those players, those would have been some of the ones where I'm like, you know what, I'd be willing to let them just bridge to points, but I'm not selling any of my picks. I'm not disrupting the build that I already started, because he says I have a lot of players in bad situations. Like I have Pitts, bad situation. JSN, maybe bad situation for this year. Garrett Wilson, bad situation for this year. So there's just too much, I think, to overcome. The good thing about when you built this team, this is a team that might have been able to compete if things would have gone right, and you still would have planned to kind of tank for this year, but things haven't gone right. So don't tell yourself the story about, oh man, if this happens and this happens and this happens and I move one of those firsts for 2 pieces, I can still contend, because I think there's a lot that has to go right here. And he says right now people overvalue their first round picks, which tells me that the whole league is probably trying to feel out where they're at.
So they properly value their first round picks.
Well, they're not sure about just dumping them for, it tells me nobody is like, I'm for sure going to win, so I'm going to hold back my first, which is probably the proper thing to do when you just did a startup over the summer.
So I'm just going to bring up Graphic 13 because he seems to be indicative of what the room's asking. Can you get Burrow cheap? I hope and assume this is towards this roster because I've seen it a couple times in there. I don't know that we need to put any assets into Burrow. I'm fine with Kyler Murray, who's frankly in Joe Burrow's tier, and CJ Stroud, who's already moving there. So I don't know that I'd want to go get Burrow.
Can we get Burrow in a first for CJ Stroud and Luke Musgrave?
Okay. If we can do something like that, definitely.
Propose it.
Right.
And well, there being, I'm moving Luke Musgrave in a format where the tight end doesn't matter that much. And I'm essentially, one of the first comments was, and I think Sanford said, too many tight ends. I mean, agree. Yeah. This is a league where you either have an elite producing tight end, which I don't care about having when I'm not winning. So like right now, I'm not worried about it. And I have too many tight ends. I have too many tight ends that hold some semblance of value. And you probably can move Musgrave, assuming he comes back from his concussion, which it sounds like he is. You may be able to move him easier than Pitts, but he's not even really he's maybe worth a second. So like if I can get a first and Burrow for Stroud and Musgrave, then I'll just take it. I'll bank the first, and I'll go into next year with just Musgrave and Mayer.
Yeah, Musgrave's the cheap out on that, right? Like that's just a cheap throw in to do, and if or add a little more. I'd expect if I was trading for or trading, I'd probably want a second if I was the person on the other side of this deal. Also, I don't think I would make that deal if I was the person on the other side of this. I like Burrow. I need it put out there, but I'm not adding a first to CJ Stroud to get to Burrow, which is what I think you're going to need to do in most leagues.
Just wait. Just wait for and it's not just Burrow. It's any QB that's in that tier where something happens. Burrow's just the one that's on the mind right now that, he's a loss or two and an aggravation of his injury from being a dead asset for the rest of the year. At least, even if he comes back later, he's in the community's eyes. They're going to look at him as like, he's not helping me win. So if I can get another QB in the same tier, that's when you're able to tax them. And you got to throw them something back. They're not going to send you Burrow in a first for Stroud, but you hide the value in there of Musgrave or whatever the hell else you want to throw in. Throw in Treylon Burks, throw in Jamison Williams, like those types of players. You hide the value and say, you're going to pay me the tax. I need the tax in the form of what I want, which is a first. I'll give you some of this other stuff, which Jamison Williams, that's not helping you in this format anyway, whether you like him or not, but that could be somebody that's appealing to the other teams.
And just on that end, I mean, Sanford did bring up the fact, too many tight tight ends, and I think we obviously feel like there's way too many wide receivers when the wide receivers that you have roster Andre Alasova. That's not how you pronounce his name, but I don't care because it doesn't matter.
Yoshivas.
It doesn't matter. Terrace Marshall, Calvin Austin Jr., even if he did the third, excuse me. Calvin Austin Jr. might have been pretty good. I don't remember. But Calvin Austin the third, even if he did have that one really good catch 2 weeks ago. Was that 2 weeks ago? Thursday night or Monday night? I forget what night. Rondell Moore is a Treylon Burks. I was telling you people that he was bad, but no one listens to me. Anyway, yeah, there's too many wide receivers on this roster. They're just there are a lot of these wide receivers. I don't know, a lot's the word, but I'd move some of these wide receivers just for thirds for next year, or even 25, so that I'd have more capital and more flexibility.
Yeah, he says it's the first league for everybody in Dynasty, so they didn't implement a max points for rule or a potential points rule, so it's just standings.
Good for him. Good for
which
him.
I didn't check you'd have to go through and look at each team, but I'm trying to figure out where the other teams might be and see this team is 1-3, this team's 3-1. Just seeing if there's how many other teams are 1-3 or 0-4, because you want to ensure that you get that 101 or 102. I mean, you want to get the best pick you can if a team is headed nowhere and you can't afford to win a game. He does say A-Chain is on his taxi, which was approved, so he's not scoring any points. So
I'm wondering why Stroud isn't on the taxi. But although I mean, at this point, it's probably too late. I'm guessing there's if you've started 3
before the year, if you didn't put him there, then you can't. It says he says this. He says he can start 1 to 2 scrubs, but if he does more, the commissioner will start calling him out and switching things around. So Ken, here's the reality. We always preach, do what you can. That's the best for your own roster. I will go to bat in any league that I'm in. If it doesn't say I can't do it and I am acting with what is the best interest of my team, I'm always going to push back on, well, you have to start your best players and whatever. If it's not explicitly stated, do what you can for your best team. You are pushing your team in the direction that you need to. So I'm not saying piss your commissioner off. If he's going to get on you because you start too many scrubs, which is probably not fair and completely subjective. What's a scrub, right? You start Wan'Dale Robinson, you say he's a scrub and then he sucks. And they're going to say, the point is,
but there's things that aren't subjective that you need to be able to do. You need to be able to put CJ Stroud on your taxi squad because he is a rookie. I understand.
But it may be too late if you didn't do it. If you can put CJ Stroud on the taxi, if you can't because the season already started, then that's where you would look at, okay, can I move Stroud for a Burrow deal, right? The whole point is legally getting points off your roster where they don't disrupt what you're planning to do next year, which is CJ Stroud, Kyler Murray, the 3 top receivers, and you don't have to move A-Chain because he's on your taxi. Pitts or Musgrave. That's it. Everything else can go or get cut.
There's no reason to move Pitts, though. That's the beautiful thing. Starting him every week, he's not going to get any points.
Correct.
Unfortunately. What's hurting you is Jamar Chase. We're not moving him. Of movable pieces. We're not moving Jamar Chase. Garrett Wilson's another player I wouldn't count on moving. CJ Stroud is probably your only out. CJ Stroud, Zach Wilson, and Derek Carr. Because Zach Wilson, if he plays as well as he did the other night, which is doubtful, but it's in the realm of possibilities, he's going to hurt you. So, yeah, maybe you do go to the Burrow owner and go, here's CJ Stroud in a second. You give me Joe Burrow in a first. Here's CJ Stroud in 2 seconds. You give me a first. He sent Stroud, Musgrave for Burrow in a first. Yeah, try it. Look, I'd add a second to that to move off of it too.
And I'd add Jamison Williams to that. I'd add Treylon Burks to that. Anything that the other person wants to get that form of a deal done in this format, it's not going to matter.
To your point with Jamison, I'll give you Jamison. I'll give you Wan'Dale Robinson. I'll give you dudes that actually might be able to score some points. Like Wan'Dale is going to score some points. And if you're doing that whole, you have to start the best team available or whatever, he's one of the dudes you probably should start. I'm fine just starting Jackson Smith and Jigba in his current situation. Jamison, like I said, all it takes is a couple big plays and he's going to put up points. I'm good. I'd like to move those guys. Yeah.
So this is the next thing. Ricardo says liquidate. This is 100% what you want to do. So what I'm doing here, we've already talked about how to maximize my standings next year by essentially tanking my team within the rules, whether it's fair or not, tanking my teams within the rules to get the highest picks. But assuming you've done that, let's go through and just liquidate what we can. And here's where a lot of people get hung up on teams like this, and it applies more to potential points leagues. But it drives me crazy in potential points leagues where people are so stringent on what they have to get back for a player that they will let them sit on their roster all year and accrue points. And you never know when 10 points difference can move you from the 103 to the 105 because you haggled over the price of Desmond Ridder because he was a starting QB at the time. You wanted a second, no one would give you more than a late third. And you were like, man, I can't trade a starting quarterback. Meanwhile, you don't think ahead to next year when Desmond Ridder is a backup at best. And you're at 105 and you wish you could get to 103, Shane. How much does Desmond Ridder in that third move you towards getting the 103? You know, like think about that now. You pick in your direction. I know this isn't a potential points league, but let's go down the line. Liquidating Derek Carr. This is a 10-teamer too. So think about quarterback value a little bit differently. You probably need to have 4 in a 10-teamer, but I really don't give a shit about QB 23 Derek Carr. You know, I can replace that year to year. So, I mean, I would take any second for Derek Carr gone. I can't start him. And
I don't even think any second is the question. I think it goes and it gets to the point where what are you trying to do? Get points off your roster? Would you take any third?
2/3.
2/3 done.
Yep. 25 second, 26 second. Ken, he says he can't sell Carr. Well, obviously Carr got injured 2 weeks ago, and then last week he played with one arm and it was an embarrassment.
Didn't look good.
But,
it didn't
so
look good.
Wait until somebody needs a QB. Give it a week or two. I actually am not worried about playing Carr right this second that he's going to hurt you.
Right.
But as long as you start a competitive lineup, I mean, you can start Desmond Ridder and Zach Wilson and probably be on the wrong end of winning.
Yeah, and then look, Carr's going to at some point be playing again, and his arm's going to allow him to throw deeper than 4 yards a pass. I'm not going to lie to you. I would go down so low as to if the league, I spam the league for everything. So if they won't get him for a second, fine. Third, all right, whatever. Fourth at that point, because I don't even care about his long. He's not valuable. He's not a valuable asset, and he's hurting me more when he's going to put point forward.
Yeah, and don't go right to the fourth, but spam for every second.
Right.
Go to then spam for the 25 seconds. Like you can see how much work it takes to actually do this if you're going to do it right. Spend or spam for the first or the seconds, 24, 25, 26. Then try 2/3. Then try any pivot where you can pick up extra value for next year, whatever it might be. Spam for players like, I don't know, Marvin Mims. Someone like that, where it's just a better trade asset 6 months from now, or at least you think it could be. Like, be creative. You should send out 40 offers to get rid of Derek Carr. All you need is one to bite. So let's move on. Zach Wilson and Desmond Ridder, Shane.
Real quick, back to that, though. You're talking about, so I was making fun of it not being work. It is kind of tedious sometimes when you're like, am I going through all this just to get Derek Carr off my roster? Yes, you are.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and so here's what you do when you get rid of all these players. Well, I'll save that for the end. Let's go Desmond Ridder and Zach Wilson. Anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Any pick. I would literally put it in the chat. Any pick, and let people sell you on what they say the floor is for that pick. If they send you a 25 fourth,
you might be better off starting Desmond Ridder, and at some point he's not going to be starting anyway.
No, I get rid of them all, and what I'll do is I'll just start CJ Beathard. I'll get rid of every usable player on my team except for the players I want for next year, and I'll just start any QB. Doesn't matter.
Super flex. I don't even need to start 2 QBs. I'll start one QB and Sean Tucker. You got 2 touches last week or no touches? Guess what? You're my super flex, buddy.
So yeah, you agree. We got to get rid of Derek Carr, Zach Wilson, and Desmond Ridder, right? They need to be off my team in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, let's get off of them. And Carr, I can understand if it's going to take a little bit longer, only because, yes, his arms were broken.
All right, the running back room, there's no value in A-Chain's parked on your taxi, so we can just ignore the running back room. And if there's ever any value on any of these running backs, like Zamir White, because Jacobs gets hurt, or Zach Evans, I could see him getting a shot some point later in the year. Abanikanda, same thing.
These are good guys to start every week, though.
So that's what I mean. There's nothing I need to do immediately with these running backs that I have. So you just kind of stick with them and they're not hurting you. So, he asked in the chat, what should he sell A-Chain for? He's not hurting him from a points perspective. He does not have to start him. So what are you selling him for here?
The problem is I want young receivers, but the young receivers I like are actually producing -1 game for Chris Olave. Man, that is a thin line. I almost just want to just move him for pick so I don't get any points on my roster.
What about T. Higgins in a first for A-Chain in a second?
That's funny. His name that's who popped in my head. If it's going to be someone, it's going to be T. Higgins, who's not producing and has a broken rib. But if he gets he's going to put points on the board. I mean, you're almost a chain. You're almost in the spot where if you're going to move him, I almost want picks, just picks. Hi, Dan.
Yeah. Let's put A Chain aside because he's not hurting you. You're not forced to start.
Right. And
so
there's
wait.
No reason to move him other than he's a running back and his value is really high.
Wait a little bit of time. Wait till we get to. I don't even want to say I want to buy a receiver that has a season-ending injury, but what you want to do is wait until and answer this, Ken, because we don't know. Do you have a trade deadline in here potentially? That's a big factor as to how aggressive I am in moving some of this stuff. I would wait until
no trade deadline.
No trade deadline. Perfect. That's awesome. So I would wait until week 10, week 11, week 12. There's going to be a couple players that are valuable next year that get a MCL sprain or a high ankle sprain. That's a good one. That's okay.
Add in a London. Yeah, thanks. I couldn't think of like a young wide receiver that I like. That isn't producing, but London falls in that bucket too. And I don't expect it to change anymore, but maybe he produces just enough that there's hope for him in the future and it works out. So a chain for London in a first, a chain for Higgins in a first, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And just wait until there's that moment where the injury is looking. Remember Cooper Kupp had his ankle injury last year and it was a 6-week return and it was going to put him right on the brink of the fantasy playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like that type of injury where the person that has him is like, I'm going to be right up against the wall, whether this player is going to be usable. I don't want to buy the guy that blows out his ACL in week 10. Like I'm okay with that. But the guy that looks like they're going to have the potential season ending or injury that's going to hurt me from getting to the playoffs, I'll buy somebody like that. If you can get points or if you can get points off your team in the form of A-Chain, I'll be willing to buy a player that's injured later on in the year. So we had a couple comments. We'll keep moving forward. The guy who has London wants A-Chain. Yeah. Okay. That's an interesting one, dude. What's the tax, Shane? London for A-Chain. I'm definitely charging a tax, but what is it? Do I give them throw in Musgrave or J-Mo and get a first back? Do the same kind of thing you were doing with Burrow and Stroud?
Yeah, and the same thing. I'll throw on a second if it gets me a first back. And now, obviously, I'll look at the seconds and go, oh, which one I think is worse? And that's the one I'll try to send to him, knowing that we don't always predict those things as well as we'd like. But that would be my thought.
Yeah, I'd be willing to give one of the tight ends, probably Musgrave plus, J-Mo or J-Mo and Burks or whatever the hell it is. Like that, those players don't have much value. So if you can get a deal done like that, the important thing is getting the asset that is going to start for you and banking the first. Like that's the dominant move here in this case. So receivers. So I think Ruben said in the chat, shout out to Ruben. He said liquidate earlier, get rid of all the receivers below Wan'Dale Robinson. I mean, I'd even get rid of Wan'Dale and Jalen Hyatt and Burks and J-Mo. Like I'm the top three and then the rest I'd be willing to liquidate for picks. Yeah.
And the only reason I want to put this out there, the only reason I'm specifically moving J-Mo, even not Burks, Hyatt and Wan'Dale is because they can accidentally score some points, but they're not good enough to matter long term.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like I'm fine starting Treylon Burks. I'm fine starting Rondell Moore. And if Rondell Moore is going to break off a 60-yard run, whatever, it's going to happen sometimes. I'm fine starting Alec Pierce in his 10% target share. I'm fine starting Terrace Marshall. And is he even active anymore? And Andre Isashova, the hockey player. I'm fine starting him too, because these are guys. Well, then Ken, you would pull, he says J-Mo's on his taxi squad. Okay, so J-Mo won't hurt you either. So fine, hold on to J-Mo. So that's good. But if J-Mo pops at all, please get off of him. Don't be like the other J-Mo.
Keep him on your taxi, but also be trying to trade him at the same time.
Yeah.
So just don't worry about him being in your lineup. Ken, I have a team like this where I have Anthony Richardson, Patrick Mahomes, like 18 picks over the next 2 years. And literally I don't even have enough players to start. My entire bench consists of 17 backup quarterbacks because it's the same thing as your league where is not potential points. It is record. And they can force me to start the players that I have. What they can't do is force me to go pick up roster clogger players off waivers instead of Kyle Allen, CJ Beathard, Cooper Rush, Tyrod Taylor, Blaine Gabbert, Mitch Trubisky, Andy Dalton, all of them. My entire bench is backup quarterbacks. And the only goal is I have enough to be where I want to be next year. And if anybody loses a quarterback, I have the backup. And some people don't take them, but I have them all, and I also cannot start anybody better. So there you go. Unfortunately, one of the players I had was Logan Thomas, so that sucks.
Oh, Logan.
In my lineup, put up like a 28 spot. I'm going, really going to happen? But the point is, you eliminated the issue. I don't have any players to start, so well.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that, I got a feeling because they talk about ethics, he definitely has to start players in those roster spots.
Nope.
But they don't have to be good ones.
Nope, not this league. I just tell the commish, listen, I don't have any running backs. Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I'm saying I don't believe Ken's legal let him get away with that. Is my
How challenge it?
Yeah,
How can the league tell you cannot roster a player? How can they legislate you have to go find somebody off waivers to pick up?
I get that. Sometimes you just don't feel like arguing with everyone, and you pick
I'm going to argue to
and you pick up
on this type of thing.
And you pick up CJ Ham and start him at running back, and you're like, sure, I'm picking up Alex Ingold and I'm starting him every week because technically he's a running back. You know what I mean? That's all.
I don't even want to waste my time with those players. If you want to start making moves for me, then fine. But yeah, so that's the goal. That's my end goal here, at least, is I end up with a team that is CJ Stroud, Kyler Murray. Hopefully he does not return, so you do not have to start him. A-Chain on my taxi, and then Chase, Garrett Wilson, JSN. They're in my lineup every week, so I'm going to have to play them. And then Pitts or Musgrave. And my other 4 starters every week are, like Shane said, whoever. Hopefully they don't score any points. And everything else, we get 40% more draft picks. And then I go into next year with the 101, Stroud, Kyler, or whatever quarterback you pivot from Stroud to. Those 3 receivers, and I own damn near half the picks in the league over the next 2 years. And just rebuild from there. That's where I'm taking this team. I'm maximizing the tank.
Yeah, and if you haven't moved a chain, look, you only need one more running back to start. You've obviously got a good one in a chain. The quarterbacks are going to be set. Hopefully, Jackson Smith and Jigba will pull out of the first 4 weeks, and his next 13 weeks will look a little better. Maybe Kyle Pitts will have a spike week. That's another one. If Kyle Pitts has a spike week, get the hell out. Would be my advice, or even 2 spike weeks. If it takes 2 spike weeks to get out to get a decent value for him, do it.
Yeah, that's a good point on the tight ends. Is I'm very, very much, I only need a tight end when I'm trying to win. I mean, we already know what the position distribution looks like from a war standpoint. Like, I'm not sweating if I don't have my tight end in place the year before I'm ready to win.
Right.
So it's nice that you have Pitts and Musgrave. It gives you 2 shots at maybe having an elite producer. But I don't want to say, okay, if Musgrave has a top 8 season this year, I don't want to sit there and go, you know what? He's going to be a difference maker, so I can't move him. If anything, you move him and bet on the one that's not producing this year, because I think I'd still bet on Pitts over Musgrave, but the point is you don't need both. So get rid of the one that you can get value, which is probably going to be the one that's producing short term. This was a good team to break down because I think he had a plan. And I liked that a couple people in the chat brought up at the beginning, hey, this team can still win. But I think there's too many factors in a shallow league where there's just too much for this team to overcome. And you did a startup this summer with this in mind. Mm-hmm. Don't let a 1-3 record and the recency bias of what's going on in this season sway you on the plan that you've been sitting on for the last 6 months. And that's the dynasty discipline that Ray always talks about, is like, stick with your guns, especially when 15 arrows you've pointed are going in one direction. And just because 2 of them flip around doesn't mean you completely overhaul the roster.
No. I mean, look, it'd be one thing if you already had another quarterback and we're like, you know what? If you just add a running back to this roster and one more like wide receiver 3, then sure. You
can follow up with us if any trades come in, anything comes up where you're like, yeah, you guys mentioned that, but this isn't exactly what I'm seeing in my league. Let us know, message us. We do check Twitter every once in a while, but honestly, a lot of the messages we get on Twitter, we just don't get to. We just focus everything on the Discord. So find us, hit us up, tell us you had a roster review follow-up. We'll be able to answer anything that comes up as you move forward. Shane, any final pieces of advice other than be the aggressor? Don't just put players on the block. Like, be sending out the offers like it sounds like he was already doing, right?
Yeah, no, like he's already aggressive. We see that, right? We said, hey, what about this Burrow deal? He's like, oh, yeah, you know what? Let me try to send that out right now. Let me try to do that. And if any other opportunities present themselves throughout the season like that, obviously go for it. If God forbid something were to happen to Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Josh Adams, who am I thinking? Who am I not thinking of? Lamar Jackson. See if you can make moves with Stroud and get something back. Plus, which is is the better quarterback for fantasy purposes. So just make sure you're keeping an eye on what's happening, and just remember, be aggressive.
Yep. And I like that he had a plan. So it was a good review. Yeah. Thank you for the review, Ken. We appreciate it. It was a good one to kind of talk through some points. And there's a lot more people that have teams like this where, maybe they got more points than they expected. And they're wondering, man, I don't want to punt this season when it looks like I have a chance. And it's very hard for me to overcome that threshold and flip the direction of a team after 4 weeks. So thanks for the review, Ken. If anyone's interested in more info on the review, roster review, dynastytradesin5.com. Get more information on it, and we'll hit you up with some of the options that you can get a review with.